Good morning, students. Today, let us start with English 2 new chapter, chapter 12, Neighbours. Open your page number 94. Let me introduce to the author. About the author, Louisa May Alcott, 1832-1888, was an American novelist and a poet. We remember her most of her novel Little Women and its sequels Little Men and Joe's Boys. Louisa was famous for her writings. She was an American novelist and a poet. Okay, now open page number 91. Getting started. What do you think is more important to you? Having all the expensive things that you have dreamt of, or a group of friends to have fun with? So students, what do you think? You want all the expensive gifts from your parents which you dreamt, or you want a good friends to have fun with them? Just think about it. Friends are better than all expensive gifts, right? Okay. Written by Louisa May Alcott, Little Women covers the life of the March family over about 15 years. The family lives in Concord, Massachusetts. The starting point of the book is Christmas in 1861, which was also the time of the Civil War in America. It talks about the lives of four sisters, Jo, Beth, Meg, and Amy, and it is loosely based on the life of the author and her four sisters. Films, television serials, and musicals have been made based on this book. So this story is of four sisters, and on this story they have made films, television serials, and many musicals also. So let us move on to the lesson. A garden separated the March's house, a shabby one, from Mr. Lawrence's stately mansion. It had everything, yet seemed a lifeless house, as few people went in and out except the old gentleman and his grandson. Joe, however, imagined the house to be a kind of enchanted palace full of splendors and delights, and longed to make friends with the Lawrence boy. Mr. Lawrence's house was very large, but it was not having any life because there were only few people who went in and out. But the old man was always inside. So his grandson was Joe. Joe had a very kind heart. He was very good boy. And in that house, it was like a palace. The house was like a palace, and in that house there were all luxury items, and there was joy which made them have fun with those luxury items. That means they had all the luxurious comforts, and everyone wanted to make friendship with Lawrence boy. One snowy afternoon, Joe saw Laurie standing with his head leaning out of the window. She threw a snowball at him, and he turned and greeted her with a big smile. Joe called out, "How do you do? Are you sick?" One afternoon, Joe saw Laurie standing near the window. Then she threw a snowball at him. So what happened? Laurie turned and he greeted her. He wished her with a big smile. So Joe asked him, "How do you do? Are you sick?" "Better, thank you. I had a bad cold for a week," said Laurie. "You look lonely," put in Joe. So he said, "Better, I am feeling nice now, thank you." "You look lonely," put in Joe. Joe said, "You're feeling lonely, right?" "I have no friends," replied Laurie. Laurie said, "I don't have any friends here." "You have us," said Joe. "Yes, indeed. Will you visit me, please?" said Laurie. Joe said, "We are there as your friends, don't worry." So Laurie said, "Yes, okay, fine. Then will you visit me? Will you come to see me?" "Let me ask mother first," said Joe, and marched into the house. She said she will ask her mom, then she will inform him. Mrs. March, however, had no objections, and Joe walked through her garden and crossed into Mr. Lawrence's house. So, Joe's mother, she said, okay, fine, you can go. Then she went to meet Laurie to his place. Here I am, bag and baggage, Joe informed Laurie. Mother sent her love. Meg sent you some tarts, which she cooks rather well, and Beth sent you her kittens. So she went to meet him and she said, my mom has sent you love and Meg sent you tarts. Tarts means sweet. And Beth sent you her kittens. Is Beth the rosy one who stays at home a great deal? Yes, that's our wonderful Beth. The curly-haired girl is Amy. Yes, indeed. But how do you know? You have never met them, said Joe. So he knows the name of those girls also. And Joe is asking, how do you know about them? You have never met them? I often hear you calling out to one another. You always seem to be having such fun. I haven't got a mother and I can't help feeling lonely. Laurie said that, Joe, you will always be calling in your house. So from that I came to know about your sister and brother's name, and you'll always be having fun. You all together will have such a fun. I don't have mother and so I feel very lonely. Why doesn't your grandpa let you visit us? Joe is asking, why your grandpa will not send you outside? You can come and visit us. He doesn't send me to your place because he thinks I might be a bother to strangers. Do you want to come down and see our library? Grandpa is out, so you needn't feel afraid. So he is saying, if I come outside and meet stranger, my grandfather will feel that I am bothering them, I am troubling them. So he will not send me outside. And Laurie is asking Joe, will you come to my house and see our library? Without feeling afraid, you can visit my house. Anyhow, my grandpa is outside. I am not afraid of anything, said Joe, tossing her head. Joe said, I am not afraid of anything, said Joe, tossing her head. She said, I am not scared of anything. She was moving her head here and there. Laurie showed her the entire house. The last room he took her to was the library. It was a huge room lined with books, pictures, and statues. Then what happened? Laurie took her to the entire house, full house, and the last room was the library. And the room was very big and there were number of books, pictures, and statues in the library. What riches! Sighed Joe. Laurie, you should be the happiest boy in the world. So she said, you should be happiest boy in the world. A fellow cannot live on books. Just then the doorbell rang. He said, you just cannot live on the books. It's not that I am so rich. Then they will hear the doorbell. It's ringing. Mercy me, it's your grandpa. So Joe is saying, oh, it's your grandpa. So what if it is? You are not afraid of anything? Said Laurie. So he is saying, so what if my grandpa comes? Smiling wickedly. A maid entered the room. The doctor to see you, sir, she informed Laurie. So a maid enters the room and she says, doctor has come to see you. Laurie went away and Joe amused herself by looking around the room. She was standing before the portrait of an old gentleman when the door opened again. So what happened? Laurie went outside and Joe was looking into the room. Then suddenly she will see a picture of an old gentleman. Then she hears the door sound. Thinking it was Laurie, Joe said loudly, Why should I be afraid of this old man? He's got kind eyes, even though his mouth is grim. He is not as handsome as my grandfather, but I like him. So Joe thought it is Laurie who came inside, and she said, why should I get scared of this old man? He has got nice eyes. His eyes are so kind, and his mouth is grim. Grim means serious or unattractive. Then she said, your grandfather is not as handsome as my grandfather, but it's okay. I like him. Thank you, ma'am, said a gruff voice behind her. Jo turned around and, to her horror, found old Mr. Lawrence standing behind her. Jo wished she could run away from the room, but there was no escaping. So she heard a rough voice from her behind saying, thank you, ma'am. It was old man. It was Mr. Lawrence who was standing behind her. Jo wished she could run away from the room, but there was no space to run away. So you're not afraid of me, hey? The old gentleman asked her. The old man asked, so you're not afraid of me? Not much, sir, said Jo. And you don't find me as handsome as your grandfather? Not quite, sir. So grandfather is asking, I'm not handsome like your grandfather. She said, no, sir, you're not handsome. But you still like me? Yes, I do, sir. The answer pleased the old man, and he had a good laugh. You have got your grandfather's spirit, even though you don't have his face. So the old man, he liked her answer and he laughed. He said, you have got your grandfather's spirit. Thank you, sir, said Jo, feeling quite comfortable by now. Then she said, thank you, sir. She was a little bit comfortable now. So you think my grandson is lonely and needs cheering up? Mr. Lawrence asked her. So what happened? Grandfather is asking Jo, you think my grandson is lonely? He wants some fun activities to be done? That's right, sir. He needs friend. So she said, yes, sir. He needs some friends. Laurie came down the steps and was astonished to find his grandpa with Jo. Jo gave Laurie a triumphant glance and Laurie winked back in delight. So what happened? Laurie was surprised to see his grandpa with Jo, and he was so happy he just looked back with a smile. Tea that evening was an enjoyable affair. Laurie and Jo chatted away, while Mr. Lawrence did not miss the change that had come over Laurie. So what happened that evening? They both together sat to have tea, and they were talking to each other. Seeing this scene, Mr. Lawrence felt very happy. By God, the girl's right, thought Mr. Lawrence. I will allow him to play with the March girls. So Grandpa said, oh, this girl was really good, and she is right that my grandson needs some friends. So I will allow him to play with these March girls. Okay, students, this is end of the chapter. Now I will explain you in brief. This is the story of two families, the March family and the Lawrence family. The March family had 4 sisters and they had a lot of fun together, though they were not as well as to do as the Lawrence family, who lived in a large house. The Lawrence family had a great grandfather and a young boy named Laurie, who was very lonely and would watch the March sisters enjoying themselves. However, his grandfather did not send him to their place because he thought that Laurie might be a bother to them. One day, Jo one of the March sisters visited Laurie and brought him some tart and kittens. They got on well together, and Laurie invited her to see the library and told her not to be afraid since his grandfather was out. Joe said she is not afraid of anything. Soon Laurie, since he had been unwell, had a visit from a doctor, and Joe was left alone to explore the library. There she saw a painting of an old man, the grandfather, and thinking that Laurie was in the room, she gave her opinion about the painting. As it turned out, it was the grandfather who was in the room. And Joe, though initially got scared, got talking comfortably with him. When Laurie came in later, he was surprised to see them together. Later, while they were having tea, grandfather noticed how happy Laurie looked talking to a friend and decided that from then onwards he would allow Laurie to play with the March girls. This is the end of the story. Remaining grammar part I shall continue in next video. Thank you.